All right, what's going on, guys? We're gonna be checking out this day of eating. Let's check it out.
This is what I eat in a day to get into the best shape of my life. I'm fasting in the morning, so meal one is at 1 p.m.
Okay. So the first thing he said is that he's fasting until about 1 p.m. and then he's gonna eat. So usually, at least for me, I typically eat I typically get hungry naturally, like kind of shortly after waking up, and especially if you're more like kind of I guess carbohydrate sensitive, so to speak, and you're more adapted to using carbohydrates for ATP, for oxidation for ATP. You'll probably you can often get hungrier earlier in the morning. If you're more fat adapted, it's possible you could maybe go for a few hours. Um, but yeah, so I mean, as long as he's not as long as he's listening to satiety signals, I mean, it's probably fine.
Organic rice, grass-fed.
Okay, so he's using organic rice. Looks like it's white rice. White rice is better than brown rice, by the way. I mean, contrary to what many people may think, because you actually want to remove the husk. The husk is like that outer brown part because it has a fair bit more of anti-nutrients, fair bit more arsenic. You know, it's more absorbent. So you definitely do want to remove that because that's kind of how because rice it's like a seed basically. That's kind of how it protects itself. And even then, you are still essentially eating seeds. So rice will still have even white rice will still have a fair bit of phytic acid, and also the roots are very absorbent of arsenic. Other than that, though, especially if your gut's healthy, it could be utilized. I personally don't utilize white rice. I mean, I just go for more things like like raw fruit and unheated honey and things like that. But it is a decent source of glucose. It doesn't have the fructose to help refill liver glycogen, but it is a decent source of like at least glucose. So yeah.
Beef, raw local honey.
Okay, looks like he has some ground beef here, which is good. Obviously, we have a fair bit of meat. So ideally, if you have like high quality meat, like I'm talking like, for example, for beef, like 100% grass fed and grass finished, like no medications or whatever, then ideally you would actually eat it raw if you had a good source that you actually enjoy eating. Um, because you'll preserve more of the heat sensitive B vitamins and like vitamin C or whatever because those are more water soluble, so you can often get cooked out during the cooking process. Creatine can get reduced, and other just nutrients in general will get reduced during the cooking process. You'll create things like heterocyclic amines or whatever, but ultimately, I mean, it's not really that indicated. It seems that cooking is like absolutely detrimental, so it is what it is, right?
Topped with Celtic sea salt and a
Okay, and I think he said local raw honey. So, which is great for sure. I think that's great. And the only thing is, like, there's like a lot of raw honey is fake, guys. Like, if you go to the store, a lot of it is just like absolute, like, even if it says raw, like, I'd say the vast majority of it is actually heated, like, it's heated in insane amounts to the point where it's basically pasteurized. So you lose the enzymes like glucose oxidase and like invertase and all that help actually assimilate, the carbohydrates in the honey. You want truly unheated honey, like never heated. And basically, a good sign you can tell is if it crystallizes after a while, like it essentially becomes like almost rock solid. There's a pretty good chance it's like unheated honey. Now, and if you get honey straight from the hive, I do realize like it is like quite liquidy, but like over time it should crystallize. So yeah, and then Celtic sea salt. I think salt can be utilized. I mean, a lot of people who are against salt. I mean, especially if you're cooking your meat, though, you are kind of cooking out a lot of the structure. I mean, you can cook out a fair bit of the structured water, so you could maybe utilize some salt to replenish the electrolytes. But especially if you eat like raw meat, you typically don't have much of a craving for salt. I notice.
banana on the side.
Okay, and you got a banana on the side, so that's cool. A fair bit of so you get a little bit of fructose to help refill liver glycogen, and there's a decent ratio between fructose to glucose, it seems.
After that, I'm having a pre-workout snack. Dates, butter, black coffee.
Okay. So yes, dates and butter, those are great. Obviously, I do it. And of course, I do it. The fruit would be raw, but I think most people are pretty comfortable eating fruit raw because I mean it preserves the enzymes and I mean all the good stuff. So dates and butter, ideally the butter would be raw if you can get it from a good source for sure. Even then, even if it's pasteurized, I mean, butter is mainly fat. So you are preserved because the fat soluble vitamins are a bit more heat sensitive. However, you are losing enzymes and you are still reducing, you know, vitamin content. And he's using black coffee. I personally am not a big fan of coffee. I mean, it has caffeine. It can be, a vasoconstrictor for sure. And caffeine is actually an insecticide meant to kind of fry insects who approach the seeds of coffee. However, if you do utilize coffee, make sure to really kind of brew it well to try to neutralize a fair bit of the phytic acid and, the other, anti-nutrients in there.
More local honey and salt.
Okay, and more of his raw local honey. As long as it's truly like unheated honey, I mean that's great. And then salt again, we talked about.
Time for the workout, and today we're outside for a functional push day, and of course making sure we're getting some grounding in at.
Okay, so he's doing a little bit of a push day, and he said it was a functional push day. Functional training, I think, is great for sure, because especially you don't want to be excessively stressing yourself with like pumping a bunch of metal up and down. I mean, for sure, like I guess I'm not like entirely against the gym, but just definitely don't overdo it. Like listen to your body signals, and especially functional movement is a lot closer to kind of natural human movement, so for sure it could be utilized. And he's also getting some grounding in. Grounding is great for sure because the ground actually gives you electrons. So actually, because often through oxidation you lose electrons. So the ground actually, like the earth, like if you're bare feet on the earth, it'll actually help replenish those electrons in your body. So it's very good for sure. It helps relieve oxidative stress in your body.
At the same time, which is absolutely crucial. Post-workout, and second meal of the day is going to be half a watermelon, more grass-fed beef.
Okay, so local watermelon, that's great. For sure, especially if it's local, I mean, this can be really, really quite good. A good source of, very minimal anti-nutrients, a good source of, fructose to help refill liver glycogen, and then some more beef again. That's cool.
And more local honey.
Yeah, more honey again. So,
Now, third and last meal of the day is pasture-raised eggs, even more beef.
Okay, pasture-raised eggs are great for sure, because you do want the eggs, you do want the chickens to be as healthy as possible, like roaming around, getting a bunch of sunlight, ideally eating their natural diet, which is like a lot of insects and bugs and things like that. And here's the thing, right? Again, what I personally do with eggs, if I consume eggs, I'll usually actually just eat the yolks like completely raw, and then I'll actually just discard the egg whites. I mean, and there's also an argument to be made for frying an egg, so like essentially, cooking the white but leaving the yolk like as runny as possible, which also seems to be a pretty reasonable approach for sure. Well, I mean, when you cook in eggs in general, though, I mean, you are still going to be kind of creating like heterocyclic amines and like these byproducts that are best to avoid if you can. It seems, but yeah, I mean, for sure, because the whites. Because think about it this way, right? Like in the egg whites, like they're supposed to protect the yolk, right? Like the yolk is like the potential future baby of like the chicken, right? So the egg white kind of exists to like protect it, to protect the yolk. That's why it has like some anti-nutrients and stuff in there. Although not like an insane amount, but anti-nutrients still do exist. And I just think intuitively, like it appeals to a lot of us to just kind of eat the yolk raw, So yeah, and it looks like some more beef here.
Some sauerkraut for gut health.
Okay, so sauerkraut for gut health, he says. Now, okay, here's the thing. Sauerkraut, I do see a reason for it to be utilized. However, it is essentially like fermented cabbage. So with the fermentation process, it's quite interesting for sure. Definitely will, let me rephrase that. Definitely will increase the probiotic counts, like the bacterial count, for your gut. And then, you can introduce more microbes into your gut. So that could help some people for sure, especially if you need some more bacteria. However, I mean, with cabbage, with fermentation, you will reduce a fair bit of the anti-nutrients, like, whatever you may have, phytic acid, or just whatever it may be. However, it's still it's not really that nutrient dense to begin with. Like, I personally, if you want something fermented, I'd recommend something like fermented milk or something. Like some fermented animal products, or maybe even fermented fruit, potentially. But fermented animal products are quite nutrient dense already. You get a fair bit of fat soluble vitamins like retinol. Like active vitamins, right? Like, retinol, D3, E, and K2, and things like that. And yeah, also with fermentation, there is a potential for endotoxin, but I mean, it's not entirely clear. I mean, if it's a controlled fermentation, it could be fine.
Calories and macros, don't know, don't care.
Yeah, nice. I like that. So, and yeah, I mean, let's see what he says actually.
Still sticking to my principles. Quality whole foods. That's the most important thing.
Yes, I agree with that, because at the end of the day, like, calories could play a role, but we are not closed thermodynamic systems. You cannot combust things in a calorimeter. That's kind of how calories are measured, by the way. Calories have no resting mass, so we don't really technically consume calories in the way you might think we do. And for macros, I mean, like you can look at them if you want, but I think really you do want to. I mean, for sure, if you want to look at anything, you can look at your micronutrients because those are the things. Those are like things that those are essential that you need. However, if you're eating like an animal-based diet that's appropriate for a species and something that you genuinely enjoy, especially incorporating as much high quality raw stuff as you can, I think that's great. But yeah, overall, this is pretty solid. I'd say. I mean, there are some things that I kind of said maybe I'd do differently, but overall, this guy does look and seem pretty healthy, and especially you got a fair bit of grounding. So yeah, good stuff.